What's the most high-risk, low-reward thing you've ever done? I once followed a young homeless man I just met because he wanted to show me where he was staying. It was nighttime and he invited me down into a dip in the trees. We walked through a dark section of forest, then he showed me some rocks and small caves with a couple beds set up. Then we left. I literally followed a stranger into the dark woods because, curiosity? Suicidality? I once climbed an old truss bridge to get some neat pictures of myself. I climbed under it and sat on the beams beneath the bridge. I climbed to the very top. I hung off the edge of the bridge above several rocks. Once I got done and showed the pictures to my friends and they said they sucked. Edit, thanks for the rewards. This is now my most liked comment, thanks internet people. I'll also be looking for the pictures and if I find them I'll post them. Edit 2, I have one of the pictures, I'll post it on my profile. Walking into my house as a confident 15-year-old with a cigarette in my mouth telling my dad things were gonna change around here. Wow. Did not expect this. I feel I must clarify for all involved. This was a skit from a Lee Evans consort I had just watched with a friend. Thinking it was a good idea, I thought of doing it to my dad, a merchant seaman of considerable years and experience. A hard man basically. You're either liked or not. No middle ground with him. I didn't take into account that he hadn't seen this particular concert and for all intents and purposes, does not do funny. The hit I took that day forever changed me as a man, as it's the best I've had yet. So yes, things changed. I never tried anything that foolhardy again. I still get ringing in my right ear and I never ever told my mom because I fear her more. Thank you all for the replies and rewards. I truly did not expect this. Stay safe everyone. Taking a year in a program I wasn't interested in to try and get a girl, who turned me down instantly. Edit, I wasn't horny, I was lonely and we were good friends prior, not so much afterwards as shit got awkward. It was also my second year, so I did get a useless degree I never claimed for my trouble, social science. Climbing up a water tower when drunk to find a friend. Turns out said friend was not even lost. He was yelling at me from the base of the tower. Oh, that reminds me. We got the bright idea to go rappelling off a cell tower at like 3 in the morning. This was not a spur-of-the-moment decision, it was planned. After we were done we were pulling the rope down and I guess we had left a knot in it. Rope gets stuck between the tower's vertical and horizontal supports about 15 out from the ladder we were using. Like it was stuck. At least 50 off the ground. I wasn't about to leave my $100 climbing rope hanging there, so I climbed up no rope and walked out on this 15 cross-member balancing with nothing to hold on to. Made it to the vertical support where the rope was caught, kicked it down, and then had to make it back to the ladder. Obviously I succeeded, but about 30 minutes after I got down I had the worst stress headache I've ever had in my life. I was puking, my head hurt so bad. I think I was 16 or 17 at the time. It wasn't even that fun. The rock face is much better than just hanging in empty space and sliding down the rope. Edit, now that I think about it, it wasn't even my rope. I didn't buy my own rope until a few years later in college, so I risked my life for someone else's rope. How the fuck did I get nominated for the suicide mission? I started smoking. Like, what the fuck is this stupid shit? It has literally no benefit, it just makes me uncomfortable when I don't do it and when I do it as well. Fuck cigarettes. Edit, the response to this comment was unbelievable, thank you guys. You gave me the courage to try to quit. Wish me luck. A lot of people also recommended Alan Carr's Easy Way to Stop Smoking, which I am currently in the process of reading, and I must say, it is amazing. For any silly grammar mistakes, I do apologize. I am an ESL. Sent my boss a glitter bomb, never told anyone who sent it. The whole organization, thousands of people, know it happened. Boss flipped out when glitter went everywhere. I'll never tell anyone. Edit, nice. Thanks everyone. Okay, a little more background. No one likes this boss. I actually accidentally walked into boss's office the second after it was open by accident. Glitter, everywhere, all over them, a huge pile on their desk, and scattered around the computer, keyboard, their hair, the carpet. They were pissed, and I had to stand there and wait for the reaction, which was nuclear meltdown. They tried everything to figure it out. The company is great and they will not disclose lol. Everyone was questioned lol. In the end everyone just went about their business, and the boss looked bad for blowing it out of proportion trying to rally their bosses to find me out. I was terrified I'd be found out and fired, punished. I had already been fired from my position by this person for communicating a work stoppage. Edit 2. This was very long ago and I no longer work for the organization. They are no longer with the company. In a strange twist, the boss was removed from her position for being a monster. I was in band in high school. I had a friend from middle school that was also involved in athletics at the time, and the two of us were outcasts among the greater band nerd population and often got talked down to, which even our instructor would join in on from time to time. At the time flipping backpacks was popular, taking things out of the backpack, flipping the backpack inside out, returning the items to the bag and zipping the bag back up. One day when we had a substitute in and he had the class watch the typical BS Mozart movie from the 80s again, I found a mega bag of zip ties and convinced my buddy to help me flip every student's backpack, zip tie the bags closed, and then zip tie the bags into the instrument lockers while everyone watched the movie. If we got caught and reported, the instructor 100% would have suspended us, so we were on extra edge. And right as we were wrapping up, the substitute locked eyes with us from across the room and realized what was going on and decided to pretend nothing happened, and we completed the mission right on time. The class was very pissed as the lights flicked on and they saw what had unfolded. The substitute came back for a class later that year and talked to us, saying he had to actively try not to lose his shit when he saw what was going on. I fucking love you, Mr. Hudson. Whilst building a house, the second floor had an I-beam that extended into nowhere that needed to be painted with rust protection paint. The floor had not been installed yet and the joists were still going in. To save time, I shimmied out to the end of the beam and started painting. Every breath of wind made the whole thing sway. Just my movements made it wiggle a fair bit. Nearly took a 6-meter swan dive to a concrete floor about 12 times. I could have painted it after the floor was in, but that would mean laying down drop sheets and lots of messing around. Should have waited. Was a totally stupid thing to do. I used to dive in ponds at golf courses to collect the lost balls and clean sort them to sell back to the courses. It's unbelievable just how many snakes, alligators, and leeches live in those things. I made less than minimum wage, around 6-ish at the time, and had countless close calls with critters. However, the most dangerous creatures on golf courses are old people. They do not give a fuck if you're working. They will absolutely send balls of hard plastic hurtling at your head at 50 miles per hour without a second thought, then get pissed when their ball hit your tank or cart and split open, then demand you hand over some of your recovered balls in compensation. Edit, I have been informed golf balls fly much faster than 50 miles per hour. Another edit, yes, the course was always informed when we were there, and they were usually the ones to make the appointments. We quarantined off the area with bright tape and cones with signs, and the golfers were either informed to steer clear of the area or the course shut down for a couple hours. It depends on the course though. Some people believe those rules are a suggestion and ignore all of it, especially in places without barriers or fences around the course. One more edit, this was in Florida, hence the density of dangerous wildlife. When I was about 7, there was some kind of meeting we had at school where the school counselor was asking a large group of us if there was anything we were sad or mad about. I think it was basically meant as an introduction to the concept of a counselor. I was sad that my great-grandmother had recently died, and I mentioned it. The counselor told me that it was okay to be sad, that there's a grieving process, etc. You know, the regular advice for that sort of thing. But for some bizarre reason, what I told my mother later was completely different. To this day I cannot figure out why I did this. I don't remember disliking the counselor or anything like that. The only thing I can think of is that maybe I was doing one of those nonsensical "what happens if I do this" thing experiments that all kids do. I told my mom that the counselor had told me you need to just forget about it and move on with your life. I had no idea what can of worms I had just opened. My mom was livid. Over the course of the next few days, she called the school asking why the counselor would say something like that to me, and she discussed it with a few different people. They asked what the counselor's exact words were according to me, and my mom sat down and began to write a letter to make it into a formal complaint. She asked me what exactly the counselor said so that she could put it in this letter. At that point I knew this had gone way too far, and I was feeling bad over the fact that I was going to get this woman in trouble. So I finally admitted, quietly. She said that it's okay to be sad. My mom, dad and grandmother were all very disappointed in me. My mom asked me why I would lie about something like that. I genuinely didn't have an answer for her, because I didn't know. When I said it, I had no idea it was going to go that far. I didn't know that my mom was going to go all the way to making a formal complaint about it in the few days before she started writing the letter. I was hoping that she just sort of let the whole thing go, but she didn't, so I eventually had to fess up. I still feel bad about that to this day, because assuming the counselor was told about this, she had to be wondering why I was trying to get her in trouble. She was a nice lady and didn't do anything wrong. But for whatever reason, I clicked the wrong dialogue choice and quickly realized that I couldn't exactly reload from save. Told this story before, but it's been a while. My friends and I used to break into expensive looking houses and use their showers. This was in the late 90s when ridiculous showers were in vogue and we wanted to know if they were actually any good. For the most part they were not. We never stole anything, well, except water. We brought our own towels and toiletries. We were very careful about who we hit and made sure they had set schedules and no children or pets. The reward was a shitty shower. We risked jail time. Decided to see how fast I could get up to on a nearby neighborhood road. Driving my mother's car no less. Got up to 80 miles per hour in around 6 seconds I think, and by the time I realized I should be slowing down, the tires were screeching as I tried to stay on the road. It was a mostly straight neighborhood road, 35 miles per hour, that curved near the end leading to a four-way stop. I got up to 80 right where the road began to curve, and as I was turning I was going so fast that I went over into the other lane, just a foot or two from going up over the curb. Slowed down and brought the car to a stop at the intersection, and my family member sitting in the passenger seat looked over at me as if he had just shit the life right out of himself. I was 19 at the time, and got my license that same summer. My passenger was 16. I've never had such a powerful moment of instant regret after that day. I didn't feel cool at all. I could have killed a pedestrian, a child, or myself and my family member. That was the day I truly learned that I could lose my life, and have respected all traffic laws since, well, to a reasonable extent. I'm only glad that we came out completely unharmed. I once went on a heater at the Luxor in Vegas. When it was over I had turned $60 into $78K and change. I was drunk with excitement. It was 8 AM Saturday. On the way to the cage, shadowed by 3 floor guys, I spied an empty blackjack table. I walked over to it and asked one of the floor guys with me if I could bet it all in one hand. The table has a 5K limit. He nodded okay. AA. I had no money to split. After 2 hits we end up pushing on a 17 and I avoided what would have been the most stupid, embarrassing thing I have ever done. During an all-nighter study session with my college roommate we decided we wanted to get some McDonald's. It was around 1 AM, so we left all of our stuff in a common study room, laptops and all WTF, and got in my car. It was pitch black, super foggy with my lights on, and raining to top it all off. I couldn't see more than a foot in front of my car, so we were driving 10 miles per hour down the highway on no sleep. After less than 5 terrifying minutes we decided the cheeseburgers weren't worth it and went home. Essentially high risk, no reward. I got hit by a car and broke 2 bones in my wrist. I was on my bike and the girl who hit me was a new driver. I didn't feel like messing up her record over a small mistake and making her insurance rates skyrocket. I didn't know what was messed up initially, but I just didn't want to make it bad for her. I was barely hit, I basically just fell straight sideways on my wrist. Granted, if my bike was busted, I probably would have gone after her, because that was how I got to school and around everywhere. Edit, a couple of people are calling me a simp. I was extremely tuned out, and wasn't really focused on her. Plus, I had, and still have, a girlfriend who's far prettier. I'll also add that I got it on September 13th, Friday, and that night was a full moon. I've talked about this before, but Halloween costumes were banned at my high school because of some idiots like 10 years before that dressed up and used it as an excuse to hide their face while they vandalized the school. My senior year more than half of the class decided that we would still dress up and march into the school together in the morning. We all knew we would be punished right away, but it didn't matter. I stayed up all night making a suit of armor out of metallic duct tape and cardboard, along with a broomstick horse to ride. The next day we all gathered in the parking and waited for everyone to show up. People went all out and there were a lot of amazing costumes, and after about 20 minutes of waiting we started our march in. The deans had learned of our plan and were waiting for us right as we entered. They started pulling people aside in groups and taking student IDs to hand out Saturday detentions. Got to be in costume for all of about 30 minutes before they made us change and gave us our detentions. Except for a few people that wore costumes that couldn't be changed out of, like my buddy Dave that was a Ghostbuster and had nothing under his jumpsuit. Those people got in school suspension for the day along with the detentions. I was working as a chef in a gourmet bar restaurant, and I'd become somewhat of a teacher's pet in the form of my manager's favorite employee because I was never late, covered shifts etc. Not for his sake, I wanted more money. New guy started and he was just awful, only got 2 weeks into the job before almost being sacked, but I wanted to teach him the ways. Anyway, one day he carelessly left a cloth on an open flame during prep in the morning of Valentine's Day, our biggest revenue generator, and the fire ravaged through about 1/4 of the kitchen, including the stock, the microwaves, the cooker and the veg prep area. And for some stupid fucking reason I said it was my fault when the manager was on the warpath, thinking the new guy would be saved and I'd just take a humongous bollocking for being stupid and all would be fine eventually. Nope. I got sacked. He threw me out. To this day I will never ever understand why I put my neck into that guillotine of fire. Freshman year of high school I went to Spanish class and the door wasn't open, so I waited outside for the teacher to come back from her lunch break as she was not inside. Took her a while, and while I waited a bunch of my other classmates were waiting too. I was friends with a couple people in that class and I thought it would be funny to jokingly try to open the lock on the door with a bobby pin. So I tried and I stuck the bobby pin in the lock a shitload of times. Giggles and shit whatever. Well, by the time the teacher showed up a couple minutes later and tried to unlock the door, it wouldn't open. She was like, "Huh, that's weird, it was fine this morning." Keep in mind this high school was pretty strict and they had cameras everywhere. So I was freaking out internally like, oh my god, fuck. The teacher decides to send me of all people to the office to ask for someone to open the door. Worst couple minutes of my life praying that my friends didn't say shit, lol. I was stationed at GTMO, worked exterior security, nothing in the facility itself, and it's actually a pretty laid-back place to work. Anywho, there is a bunch of different beaches we could swim at and me and a few others thought it would be fun to swim down around the fences and snap some pictures on the Cuba side. Turns out they really didn't like that. They didn't approach us, but there was an announcement made that doing such was highly illegal. They shut down the adjoining beaches and they demanded we come forward. We never did and they never figured it out, but yeah, we basically risked an international incident for a couple of pictures. Stupidest thing I've ever done. Over 10 years of illegal graffiti, so fucking stupid. It's been the only constant in my life for a decade. I'm an expert in a stupid ass hobby. Arrested multiple times, been beat up multiple times. I went against the status quo of earning my stripes and accepting disrespect from the older generation. This made far more enemies than friends. There are multiple people that I don't want to run into because of shit we disagreed on 5 to 10 years ago. Rehabbed twice. Had a reward out for me that was almost 20 times minimum wage in that country. Gave up on art school and barely made it through second try because it was selling out and I only cared about graph. I'm not even a hardcore graffiti writer, I'm mediocre at best. I just stayed a purist and didn't transition to legal stuff. Legal graffiti is a contradiction and is looked down on by illegal artists. I made it into my late 20s and I'm not a failure at life. I came out better than most of the guys I've painted with over the years. I work in a completely different field now with mediocre qualifications. Now I'm considered an expert veteran, but the only people that look up to me are 16-year-old degenerates. Not worth it. It gets girls though.